Good morning, everyone. We are going to get started here in just a second. We're going to try and pull up Jesse's screen so everyone can see it. So just give us 1 second. And Jesse, we have your screen in front of us.
Okay.
Everyone, can you do me a favor? Can a couple of people just like raise their hands if you can see Jesse's screen? Yep, everyone can see it. Perfect. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm Michelle Fitzgibbon. I'm the Executive Director of the Ohio Fire Chiefs Association. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jesse Wimberly, who is a regional agent in charge with the state of Ohio's Board of Pharmacy's Medical and Marijuana Control Program. His responsibilities include the supervision of the regulation, inspection, and investigations involving medical marijuana. He's also the media relations officer informing the public of notable events involving the board. So he is going to just be providing us with a presentation today. If you have questions, you can type them in and we will read them aloud, or you can raise your hand and I can unmute your mic. But if you want to go ahead and get started, Jesse, I think the floor is all yours.
Okay, Michelle, thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. And of course, the opportunity to present today. So I will say, first off, I do a lot of presentations throughout the state, and the webinars are always fun to the extent that I can't see anyone in the room that may be asleep. And I don't get to hear any comments or as I speak. But my goal today is I know how webinars are. They are on your computer and you have to sit there and you have to listen to someone talk and just hear a voice. I'm going to try my best to get through this to get you the information you need about this program. I'm passionate about it in the sense that, I started out in law enforcement. So just my background is I'm a police officer, and I got hired with the state of Ohio Board of Pharmacy in 2002. Prior to that, I was in the United States Army. I was a police officer with the Trotwood Police Department for a few years. I got hired at the Huber Heights Police Department. I was there for 9 years, but a bulk of that was undercover narcotics. So when I did undercover narcotics, I'm buying in bulk amount, and the actual illegal marijuana that's been sold throughout the country. And to get into a program like this that is somewhat not recreational by any means, but for medicinal purposes, is a shift for me, and I had to learn a lot. And they say to teach is to learn twice. So when I have these presentations, I learn a lot from the questions I get and from some of the feedback in regard to the program. So enough about me and that. What I want to do is get through this for you today. I know it's a Friday, and there's a lot of information, but I can get through it pretty quick. And I welcome any questions. I know Michelle's going to get those to me when they come across, or if there's a hand raised. So to get started, here's my contact information. And if I can get the slide to move, do next, because it's not moving with my mouse. There we go. There's my contact information. If you need to reach me, do not hesitate. My cell phone number is on there as well. The email address, I'm easily reached by that as well. And you may have questions about the program, the medical marijuana program, but if you have any questions in general about the Board of Pharmacy at all, I know we license the fire departments and EMS sites as well. So any questions related to that now or in the future, don't hesitate. So what I want to do is get a few things out there. I know for the most part, everyone is familiar with the Board of Pharmacy. Some are not. I'd be remiss if I didn't share at least what the Board of Pharmacy is beyond just the medical marijuana control program. So the program is, one of our responsibilities, but just to give you a quick synopsis of the Board of Pharmacy for those who don't know, a little bit of an insight is, we're an administrative agency. That goes without saying. Our goal is to regulate any licensee that is purported to dispense, store prescription drugs. With that, that could be anywhere throughout the entire state. We license anyone that ships drugs to the state of Ohio. Communication is key. That's what we're doing right now. Educating law enforcement, fire departments, EMS, everyone, the medical profession, as it goes into this rollout of the medical marijuana control program, because it is something extremely new for everyone in this state. So education is key. We have legislative affairs. As you know, we send out rules and regulations. We make changes. There's a lot of stuff in the news today as far as some of our regulation and rules as well. We are also a law enforcement agency. The agents are police officers. We hire from those backgrounds when we hire for agents. And as I'll show you here, we have licensing, communication, and the specialist or pharmacist, and we have inspectors. So this spreadsheet, not spreadsheet, but this that you see here in front of you is just an overview. So legal affairs, real quick, we have rules that are being passed constantly, rules that are being submitted to legislature in Ohio that we need to monitor and ensure that there's nothing that's going to pass that affects public safety or could be of a concern with the board or change anything as far as rule. We monitor that. The licensing, we're self-funded. Everything that's paid for by a licensee for any entity that needs a license for the board that's required is paid through that department. Policy and communication, same thing. It goes without saying, like I said, the education, the policy. One of my other roles is public information officer, just dealing with the media and sharing information related to anything relevant for the state, and our search warrants that we may do, our involvement with other law enforcement agencies, those other acronyms out there. And then we have ORS. ORS is integral. I know you guys are aware of ORS. That is one of the important parts of the state as well, as far as monitoring the possibility of diversion for prescription drugs in Ohio. Medical marijuana will be reported to ORS, as I'll talk about that as we go. Compliance and enforcement is definitely one of our largest departments, where it's comprised of, as I'll show you, the agents, the specialists, the inspectors, and the department in general, as far as handling any type of administrative or criminal cases we may get. So these are the rules that we're in charge to enforce. And as you can see there, I put in bold medical marijuana. That came into exception in the last couple of years. So our responsibilities is charged with investigating and presenting evidence of violations of any federal, state, or drug laws in Ohio. And we do present to federal, state courts in regard to any of our cases that do go criminal. And then our administrative cases are heard by the board. We have a panel that here's our cases, and it's presented by the Attorney General's office. We have a legal counsel. We have a total of, I think at this point, 4 attorneys on staff. One is Aaron Reed, who I work with on a daily basis for the medical marijuana program. And the other 3 assist with that as well, but their main priority is also with the administrative issues that may come before the board, but is presented by an AG to show that we're impartial, that we're just not bringing our case against a respondent that's commonly a defendant, and it's presented by an impartial attorney. So agents, specialists, and inspectors conduct inspections of facilities. That's one of our other requirements and duties, is to inspect and ensure compliance of any site that has storage of prescription drugs. So not to bore you with this too much, but the investigations, complex investigations by compliance specialists, typically they are in the hospital settings, they are in the nursing homes, and they do inspections of those type of crimes that may occur from the Pyxis machine, from a nurse that's stealing from a patient instead of giving it to the patient. And one of the biggest concerns, of course, is tampering with drugs and taking the drugs for themselves instead of giving it to the patient. Agents, again, we hire police officers. They're either former police officers that are working for a different part of the state, of Medicaid fraud, Medicare fraud, road patrol at one point, narcotics investigators. We have a great group of law enforcement and different backgrounds to make up the investigation side of compliance and enforcement. So all crimes and investigations, including thefts, illegal processing, unprofessional conduct, violation of board orders, all those are conducted by the agents. Inspectors, we were fortunate to get inspectors in the last few years to be able to do the inspections that need to be done to ensure compliance. The difficulty was getting agents who were also doing inspections and criminal cases to kind of weigh that out to be able to get both things done at the same time and get into locations that's necessary to ensure compliance. Now we have inspectors that can do that on a daily basis and get to more places and, of course, visit more sites in a shorter amount of time. So the reason why we're here, now that that's out of the way, I don't know why that happened. Let's start from this. Apologize for that. I don't know why it stopped working. All right, back on track. So how did we get here? Let's just say real simple. The Board of Pharmacy did not start the medical marijuana program. The program was started because there was an initiative, as we all know, in 15 that issue 3, the recreational marijuana was pushed for Ohio, and that failed. However, there was going to begin a new ballot initiative and a group called the Marijuana Policy Project. What happened was their argument was that it's a medicinal purpose, it helps with seizures. They had all kinds of backing to show that they believe that this product, medical marijuana, could be used for patients, and that's the need for it. And Ohio decided, well, if that's the case, then what we'll do is we'll push to have medical marijuana only. So I know everyone's heard about the issues in other parts of the country, mainly Colorado. I've had the opportunity to go to Colorado, and you can hear from them. And then before my time, before I took over this position as a supervisor for the program, they, being Aaron Reed, the compliance director, our executive director, Stephen Shearholt, they traveled to different parts of the country and found what is the best programs that are just starting up as well. What did they learn from that? What was good, bad, or indifferent? What would they change? So of course we did the right thing, and we took the good and we utilized it, and we took the bad and did not do that. Is the program perfect? No, but as of today, it's not recreational. If you go to Colorado and you look at some of the statistics for Colorado, they have more dispensaries for marijuana than they do Starbucks. So, we try to avoid that the best we could in the state of Ohio. Therefore, House Bill 523 became effective in September 8, 2016. Who's responsible? Department of Commerce is responsible for cultivators, processors, testing laboratories. Pharmacy Board is responsible for the dispensaries, patient caregivers, new forms and methods of medical marijuana. With that, I'll just add real quick, since that's there, the new forms is, and I'll show you what forms can be used legally in Ohio. With those new forms, the one is being requested right now is for nose spray. And the nose spray is a form that they're saying is beneficial. Well, we don't know that, so we're tasked to do research, ensure that it can be useful, ensure that it's used widely throughout the country for medicinal purposes, and it may be a new form that's added to the what's already out there. Medical Board. The Medical Board has the responsibility to certify physicians, and only medical doctors and DOs can recommend medical marijuana. in their recommendation, they have, prior to being certified as a doctor that can certify or to recommend marijuana, they have to go through training. And the training that they go through is created by the medical board. They can't write prescriptions because medical marijuana is one thing. Marijuana Schedule 1 is still illegal federally. So they cannot, since they have a DEA license, they cannot write a prescription, a Schedule 1 on a prescription pad for a patient. That's where the CTRs are created to allow that to happen under House Bill 523. So under House Bill 523, medical marijuana is a Schedule 2. They can recommend it to a patient, and then the patient at that point can go to a dispensary. They also create the new qualifying conditions. And those new qualifying conditions, I can tell you now, November 1st, they're going to start looking at every 2 years. I think it's every year, I believe, they can look at new recommendations. And I know they have upcoming recommendations here soon. So we'll go over what those are as far as qualifying conditions. So it goes without saying, there are guiding principles. So the medical marijuana control program consists of those agencies that I showed, and for the entire group, it shows that the medical marijuana control program has to be patient-centered and safe. That's key. We've put some guidance documents out for various reasons, and it's all centered around safety of patients. Responsive, data-driven, and transparent. If you go on our website will show you all kinds of information. Everything I'm showing you right now on this presentation is available on our website. You can click on the website and get even more detailed information if you'd like. And that is, the transparent part of it. That goes the same for the medical board and commerce as far as their transparency and sharing information. The flexible, scalable, and sustainable, characterized by consistency, integrity, and collaboration. The key there for collaboration is, we have a total of 4 agents that are throughout the entire state, 4 quadrants, and I'll show you those later, but of those 4 quadrants, I supervise those 4, and then Commerce has my counterpart. He has 3 agents for Commerce. They're administrative, they're not criminal, but at the same time, if they have a criminal case that they need to present, they could forward that to us, and our agents can conduct investigations criminally for any processor or lab or cultivator where a criminal act may take place for any reason. So program updates, where are we at today? We have, at this point, there's 26 provisional cultivator licenses issued. And of those 26 provisional cultivator licenses, there's 13 level 1 and 13 level 2. And as you can see there, the difference between the level 1 and level 2 is strictly just size of the area of the cultivation location. So it can go anywhere from 25,000 square feet to 75,000 square feet for level 1, 3,000 square feet to 9,000 square feet for level 2. There's 3 level 2 cultivator certificates of operation issued. So that means that they have an actual certificate to operate. So there is medical marijuana being grown as we speak in Ohio. The cultivators licenses, those were issued beyond obviously the provisional, just to make sure that they're up and running, that they applied, and that those licenses match exactly how they, those locations, match exactly how they applied. So if they said they're going to have X, Y, and Z at that location, they better have X, Y, and Z when the inspectors show up to do inspections and prepare to give a certificate. So there's 3 level 2 and 3 level 1. 9 provisional licenses for processors. Just a real quick note on that. There's going to be a total of 40 processors in Ohio. Right now they're reviewing several applications to get up to 40, and I know they're doing that now. And these numbers change dramatically throughout the year, especially once a month. You're going to see shift in these numbers as new provisionals are added to processing, and of course new provisionals turn into certificates of operation. There's 4 provisional testing laboratories, 293 certificates of to recommend. Those are physicians that have taken the course, passed the course, and they can recommend medical marijuana at this time. I know that will grow in the next few days by at least 20 by end of this month. There's 56 provisional dispensary licenses that have been issued. We issued those on June the 4th of this year, and they were chosen by districts throughout the state, and we'll give you more information about that. So the certificates to recommend, this is just a depiction that the medical board created that shows that this location where you see the dots is where the doctors are located in the state of Ohio that can recommend medical marijuana or have received a CTR. Those little outskirts is noted down at the bottom. That's just the physical address of the, not the physical address, but the mailing address that the physician may have provided when they applied for their CTR. It doesn't mean that's where the doctor is. The patient has to come into Ohio, be seen by the physician, and get the CTR at that point. Qualifying conditions. These are the qualifying conditions that the medical board is responsible for, and as you can see, there's several on here that are terminal, serious conditions. The only one that's going to be of concern is, of course, the one that says pain, chronic pain, severe or intractable. I mean, I'll just be honest with the room here, where it's open for interpretation by a physician and a patient, where they say they're in severe pain. The goal is that they do their due diligence as a physician. They have a true doctor-patient relationship, and they determine that there is intractable pain or severe pain that requires medical marijuana, similar to what they would have to do if they were prescribing any other narcotic or prescription drug, be it, you know, giving ibuprofen versus an opiate such as hydrocodone or oxycodone. So the dispensaries, I know I said we have 56. There's a reason why we only have 56. I'll explain that. But right now we can issue up to 60. And the purpose of that is as I said earlier, the goal was to go across the country. What did you do right? What did you do wrong? And I can tell you every presentation I've ever been through throughout the country, be it, you know, Atlanta, they had a symposium, went to regulators in Colorado. It's the amount of dispensaries. It's, of course, recreational versus medical dispensaries. That's the shift and the difference in how there could be concerns with a program like this at all. We stuck with 60. That can grow depending on the population. It depends on how many patients actually are using the dispensaries and the demand in Ohio. You don't want to open up 120, 300, 500 only to have, you know, half of them shut down because there's no demand truly for it. Dispensaries will be required to report to the board of pharmacy. That's huge. That is important for one thing. They're still going to get medical marijuana, but they still will get treatment from their family physician. They'll also go to other traditional pharmacies. The pharmacist will have access to a patient's profile to show that they got medical marijuana. The opposite is not the same for dispensaries. Dispensaries are not pharmacies. There's no pharmacist in there, so they won't have access to the ORs. They will upload to ORs, but the access they have is limited to just medical marijuana. So in other words, it's quick. It's faster than anything else with traditional pharmacy. It's within 5 minutes that they are dispensed medical marijuana, it's uploaded to ORs. Once that's uploaded to ORs, other dispensaries will know that this registered patient obtained medical marijuana from this location. And if they try to come to their location and get more by deception or any other means, they'll be able to capture that right away. So it's near real time as opposed to nightly uploads by traditional pharmacy. Employees will be required to be licensed with the board and wear board issued ID cards while on the dispensary premises, which is, again, I always compare back to my knowledge of the traditional pharmacy and how it's run. We know who the employees are in a pharmacy because they're registered with us. Pharmacists are licensed with us. Technicians are registered with us. We know who they are. We can now, and that's new for the technicians in the last couple years where we started the process of registering technicians. Prior to that, they were just staff employees. And now we have more of a regulatory control over the technicians. However, the ID cards, that's by whatever pharmacy or facility they work at. We now monitor those cards, and we know where each technician, or I should say, dispensary employee works at all times. They'll have to submit to advertising and marketing. Let's talk about that real quick. The concern is there's going to be this dispensary, and there's going to be a bunch of people out there standing in line, and there's going to be the use of marijuana in parking lots and all these other issues. And we're going to see marijuana leaves all over the place, and we're going to see all this advertisement with that. That's not accurate in Ohio. We have extremely strict rules on advertising. They can't have anything that has a marijuana leaf. It cannot look anything like recreational. It cannot have anything enticing to children. It cannot have any advertisement on the front of a building that screams out that this is a dispensary for marijuana. Only patients can go into a dispensary. That's not the same for traditional pharmacy. Anyone can go into a pharmacy. Any physician can write for a patient. They can go to any pharmacy they want in the country and get a prescription presented and dispensed a medication to them. Not at a medical marijuana dispensary. Only registered patients and their caregivers have access into the dispensary area. So you're limited on who's going to show up there to get actual medical marijuana. No one can just walk off the street and go in and get medical marijuana. It has to be through the process. Dispensaries, when they applied in 2017, they had to pay $5,000 per application. Once they get their certificate of operation, they're required to pay $70,000, and then they'll pay $70,000 biannually for a fee thereafter. So just some key dates to talk about. I mentioned the September 19, 2000, or September 17, actually, September 19, 2017 is when the application was drafted and created for the applicants. What that did was it gave an opportunity for someone to apply, to look at the application, be prepared, answer accordingly, and then they had an opportunity to ask questions. So September 19 through October 5, 2017, a year ago today, they had the opportunity to ask questions, the applicants. Then there was an informational webinar, and then there was a second Q&A that was created. And that created a huge document that answered all questions asked about the process of applying. November 3rd, 2017, applications were accepted during that time period. The purpose of the application amendment period, they uploaded their documents online, and pretty much what happened was all applicants decided to do it all on the same day toward the end or same time period. Whatever the issue is, it created a bottleneck. It created an issue with the upload, like anything else. It could crash the server. So some of the information they wanted to get into the application wasn't accepted by us. So we, in fairness, opened it up back again, December 18th through the 20th, to those who had already picked a district, those who had already started applying and could make sure that the information they wanted in could be in. So that's what happened then. Then the scoring period started in January. That was a lengthy process. Evaluators, different teams for different portions of the application were graded by persons that have expertise in that field of questioning. And then June 4th, 2018 is when we announced the awardees for the provisional licenses. So as I said, I'd explain that 60, we can have 60, but there's 31 dispensary districts across the state. And based on viable application districts, the board, we were only able to award 56 licenses in 28 dispensary districts. And each one can get 5 licenses, no more than 5 licenses. So let me back up again. To explain that 31, the other 4, there were 3 that just literally did not apply for certain districts. And then there was 1 that didn't meet the qualifications to make it to that area. So the allocation guiding principles, applicants were awarded up to 5 licenses. They can't get more than that. No more than 66%, 2/3 of any district will be awarded, or was awarded, I should say. And then 9 of those licenses had to be economically disadvantaged groups. So allocation of provisional licenses. General allocation is by dispensary district. Again, it was ranked a list of viable applicants for each district based on evaluation score, principles. A list of potential awardees were identified in each district and prioritized by list and created for finalizing minimum requirements review before award. So there was a long process again, and a lot of things going into play before a dispensary was awarded. So let's talk about those districts. As I stated, I have 4 agents that are in the program that are responsible for the compliance and inspections and investigations, all things medical marijuana for the Board of Pharmacy. And what I'll get out there is there were investigations being done before we ever awarded. So if you applied for us and you had a possible disqualifying issue, say an arrest 2 years ago for something that disqualified you, and it was a theft of drugs, for instance, or any type of felony, we had to do an investigation, prove that, not just what's on paper, but actually do a follow-up investigation to ensure that we're not missing the mark, and they were in fact indicted, convicted, and therefore they cannot have a license. That was done. We also found that there was an EDG applicant that provided application information that they were never an Ohio resident, and they pushed forward and they were close to getting awarded, only to find out that they truly weren't eligible to get a license because they were never truly an Ohio resident, which would qualify them for all the other qualifications to be economically disadvantaged and get a license. So those background investigations were conducted prior. There's still investigations going on today. One more I'll mention is 500-foot rule. Each dispensary has to be beyond 500 feet of any prohibited site. That's a state park or a park, I'm sorry, that's deemed a park by the state, churches, any location that's treats for addiction, schools, daycares, things of those nature. Those, you can't have a dispensary within 500 feet. The question's always posed, well, what if someone puts a church or a daycare next to a dispensary that is in operation and in existence? That's on the place that builds it there at that point. Their grandfather, the dispensary is. However, they have to notify us that the location is being built or next to them now, but their grandfather, because they were there before that location was chosen to be built within 500 feet. So we'll go through these fairly quickly, but just for the sake of being able to see where dispensaries may be where you are in a particular part of the state. This is Northeast region. Agent Thomas Williams is the agent responsible for that area. We have Northwest region. Agent David Gonzalez has that Northwest region. Those dots, as you can see, depict the location, county where he is responsible for and where the dispensaries are. And we even have the names there for these dispensaries. And as you can see, District 1 and District 2, that starts eliminating where there's no dispensaries that were applied for or going to be in those areas. So where it says Greenleaf Apothecaries, if you look at Southeast District 3, that name will change. Anything that any applicant that applied with pharmacy or RX or apothecary, anything associated with an actual pharmacy, the state of Ohio actually has a statute where that's illegal to have any name depicting themselves as a dispensary, a pharmacy. So those names have to change, and I forget what they're planning on changing their name to, but some of these names will change based on the fact that they have a name that is prohibited by the state, period. And but they were allowed to be awarded with the understanding that they'll change the name once we decided to notify him of that statute. Southwest region, again, Agent Rick Hahn has that territory, and I think we're missing and then Agent Jason Doty for Southeast region. So, patients and caregivers, these are the persons that are going into the dispensary. I can't say this enough that there's a complete distinction between traditional pharmacy, where I've spent, I'd say now, 16 years having knowledge of investigating and conducting inspections to a dispensary. We have more control over the entire process to where we would ever have that control over any other entity. And I say that because we know who the patients are. We know who the caregivers are. We know who the employees are. And we know who the key stakeholders and owners of all of these dispensaries are. Whereas a traditional pharmacy, the only time my agents would know anything about a patient is if we had a complaint, if they complained, or we had some kind of issue where the patient was involved and we conducted an investigation or a background or anything of that nature. That's when we would know who the patient is. There's no need for us to know of every single patient that goes into every dispensary, or I should say pharmacy, throughout the state. There's just no need for that. And a doctor can write prescriptions all day long, but that prescription will not be worth anything until it's taken to a pharmacy and that medication is then dispensed to that patient. That's when that drug that doctor wrote for is now in the hands of someone in the state. Well, we may not know of that patient and all those patients ever. There will probably never be a need to, unless there's been a crime or some type of administrative issue connected to that. In this case, we'll know all of that. Again, this is for the sole purpose of medicinal use, not recreational use. So we have more teeth when it comes to that. And again, we can steal some of those ideas that they wish they could have done in other states and do them here, especially with a startup such as this. So all patients and caregivers have to be registered with us. They have to have an identification card. The registration is electronic, and the patients can submit for a recommending physician or physician's delegate. There's a fee. So there's a $50 fee for patients and a $25 fee for caregivers for the registration, and that's paid each year unless they're indigent. We have provisions for that as well. Patients and of course veterans and any other programs that would give a discount or waive a fee. Patients under 18 must have a parent or legal representative as a caregiver. A person must be 21 to serve as a caregiver. Patients can have up to 2 caregivers. Each caregiver can have up to 2 patients. Exceptions for general rule for families of hardship, blanket exception for hospice. What that means is a patient can be in hospice that is on medical marijuana as recommended, and the caregiver will be the nurse chosen by that facility of a hospice facility to treat that patient. So those caregivers can be as many to treat that patient, as many as necessary. A caregiver cannot receive payment, so there shouldn't be anyone out there advertising, I'll be your caregiver to take you to a dispensary and get your medical marijuana, and you pay us a service to do so. And reasonable reimbursement for expenses incurred is, again, for the hospice if there's any requirement necessary there. But healthcare providers may not be compensated beyond regular wages. So they're not going to say this caregiver was making, $15 an hour, and now they're making 18 because they've become a caregiver for a particular patient. So I have to black this out because this isn't available yet, but it just gives me the opportunity to share, because I think it's important, especially for your field, in regard to what are these cards going to look like. This gives you an idea what the card's going to look like, but not 100%, obviously. It will soon be available to see what they look like. The key for this, for the purpose of speaking to you today, is down at the bottom it says download. When you look at that, the concern has been, well, wait a minute. A patient can go to a doctor. The doctor makes the determination that they're going to give them, that they're going to recommend that they have the ability to go to a uh, dispensary and get medical marijuana. Here's the reasons why, and we're going to allow this. And they go to a dispensary. Oh, I'm sorry. They first go and register, pay their fee, and they can download their own card. Well, are they going to counterfeit these cards and create more? And we're going to have all these names. Probably somebody's going to try to do it. They have already started, you know, uh, throughout the years, I've been doing investigations where they've created false prescriptions, forged prescriptions. That happens. Even the ones that are electronic, they create a way and figure out a way to have it submitted electronically, illegally. Typically, that's those that are working in a doctor's office that's creating that. The difference between this and traditional pharmacy and any way to get away with this, they have to have a state issued ID, passport, some identification to go with it. And when they go to a dispensary, they walk into a front door, and two things can happen with this. They can walk into a man trap, and then they're allowed to go into the waiting area from that man trap. They're going to be greeted by a receptionist, and that receptionist is going to say, I need your ID and your marijuana card. And those have to match up, and then they go into the computer system, and they confirm that that patient is truly who they are. Then they can go back into the dispensary area. When they go into the dispensary area, that's completely separate from the waiting area. So if they show up with a friend, because they drove them there, the friend has to stay in the waiting area. Only patients and caregivers are allowed access into the actual area where the marijuana is being dispensed, the dispensing area. They cannot step foot beyond that point unless they're a patient or a patient caregiver. So anyone else would have to remain in the waiting area. And some of these locations, they exit out a different door. So they'll just have to go back around front and say, hey, I'm done, and take me home, or whatever the case may be. But again, they'll get to know these patients. And if someone does try to create false ID, false medical marijuana card, then it has to be backed by the ORs to show that a doctor actually recommended it and issued and put their information into a system to show that they're an actual patient. So there are guardrails around the ability to download their own card. So getting to the heart of what House Bill 523 approved in regard to forms. There's oils, tinctures, plant material, edibles, and patches. Those are the forms. Tinctures, I will tell you, again, I've worked narcotics for several years, and I didn't know what a tincture was when I was shown this a few years ago when this started getting involved. And I wanted to show that it's literally alcohol-based cannabis extract. What they do is they take what you can see there in that picture, it will go in that vial, and if it's for a child, if it's for someone that doesn't want to take the pill or vape or the other abilities that they have afforded to them to consume the medical marijuana, they can just drop this on their tongue, drop it into food product or something to that effect, and it's extracted from the cannabis leaf. So that's what a tincture is. Talked a little bit about advertising, but more so about advertising in the forms. It cannot be attractive to children. So it can be a gummy, but it can't be in the shape of a gummy bear. It can be, advertising for a product. It can't say SpongeBob SquarePants product or marijuana. It has to be exactly a medicinal form similar to any other prescription drug that's dispensed. This isn't recreational. Forms that require smoking or combustion, that's prohibited. And what that means is, yes, there's plant material, but for the forms that it's being dispensed in, they can, it's a heating element. It doesn't light up the plant material. So you won't go in these dispensaries and see bongs and all the other paraphernalia that goes along with head shops and traditional recreational type dispensaries for medical marijuana or for marijuana, period. So that won't happen. Okay. Will people do stuff that they also do with regular drugs, crushing up Xanax, crushing up oxycodone, all those things that they've been doing and misusing the product as required, possibly. There will be those people that may do that. And then the good thing about this is we get those complaints, we get those concerns, we get those traffic stops by law enforcement who we work with on this program, and had several presentations in regard to the program. And they say this patient, we proved that they left that dispensary, went straight down the street and sold the product. We caught them in the car and they took all of the stuff that they did and broke it down and put it in baggies, and they're doing it illegally. We can yank that patient registry card. That's something you can't do. Again, and I keep saying this over and over and over again. Traditional pharmacy, we can't stop a patient from being a patient. We can deter them from being doing criminal activity through dispensaries by cutting off the deception by reviewing ORs and having doctors review ORs, and pharmacists required to review ORs, but we can't stop them from being a patient, but we can with registered patients. So I won't bore anyone with statistics, especially on a webinar. So my goal is to keep you awake as much as I can. So what I can say about this is the important part about this THC, the entourage effect, that's just data was taken, and the goal is to make sure that we're not just creating a program for someone to get high. The entourage effect is something where it wasn't taken into effect, but it does give an idea of how we're going to do percentages when we do our 90-day supply. So if you look at this 90-day supply of plant material, that is how medical marijuana can be dispensed. So tier 1 and tier 2, 0 to 23% of THC content, and this is created by the cultivator and the processor in whatever form it is. Only 8 ounces in a 90-day supply, 10 ounces for terminal exception. And then tier 2, the higher the content, of course, the lower amount of ounces they can have it for a 90-day supply. Can they go there and get a 10-day supply? Yes. They just cannot exceed 90 days in any of this amount. They cannot exceed that in 90 days. Will that happen? If it does, again, if we get a phone call from law enforcement, they say they've stopped someone that has, 120-day supply on their person and they're possibly selling it, then we could track that all the way back. So one quick thing I want to get in there too. A cultivator grows the marijuana, the processor puts it into the forms such as gummies, cookies, whatever it is for dispensing. That is then transported in the exact package directly to the dispensary. The accountability on this is far more controlled than traditional pharmacy, in the sense that you can get a 500-count bottle of hydrocodone. Someone can go in there, employees, we've had those cases. You saw the picture I showed of one of our investigations. That was someone actually stealing drugs from a bottle. They can pour as much as they want in their hands, steal those, and walk away. Here, an employee is not going to be able to steal product because it's going to be packaged for sale in a 90-day, 10-day, 1-day supply. And then that's what they're going to dispense to the patient. So when the patient walks out, they're going to walk out with a bag, and that bag will have their product in it. They're going to walk out the door, and it's for that patient, and it's got their name. We can track it all the way back to the processor, cultivator, or wherever it came from. They're not breaking down anything. Typically, these dispensaries, when you walk in, there's someone behind a counter, they're helping the patient, and then they say what they want, and it's handed to them through a window, and they hand it to the patient. And there's not going to be a breakdown of anything. So that's the best part of this as well. If we see that they go over to Michigan and they get a 90-day supply, they come to Ohio and get another 90-day supply, that's deception in our eyes. One is a Schedule 1, one is a Schedule 2, and they can be charged and removed from the program at that point. Those are the kind of things, unfortunately, we're going to have to deal with. Once the program starts kicking off, we're going to see, some of the concerns. I can tell you throughout my travels for visiting other dispensaries, they really don't have a lot of issues, especially where it's recreational. No one is doing anything criminally unless they're, truly trafficking in it. And two, patients are just going to get their medical marijuana like anything else. There are some issues, but it's not as overwhelming as anyone would assume it would be. It's just not. So real quick again on the 90-day supply, this is broken down by different types of forms. So you have the oils for vaping. And again, I can't say it, I'll have to say it again. The vaping is strictly, it's not lighting it up. It's not combustible. It's a heating element that allows for the vaping, and the oils, the same. Patches, edibles, tinctures, those break that 90-day supply down by that. So quickly on the responsibility of the agents, I can just say this without boring you with all these different slides. We will do inspections. We've already started doing site visits. There's already locations that are, excited to start building out, preparing to build out. Are there going to be delays? Absolutely. This is like anything else. That was a milestone to say September 8th, the program will be up and running and there'll be medical marijuana for all. That was a milestone. That mark was missed, but we make sure that this program is run properly. I think everyone involved in this program would be hard pressed to say, hey, let's rush and get a dispensary and a cultivator open real quick, and it's not up to par. That's just complete opposite. We'll get the program up and running properly and then move and make sure everyone's moving efficiently and showing due diligence and getting both the cultivator, processor, and dispensaries open in a timely manner, not taking the summer off and then deciding, I'll start building now. That's happening, and we're doing visits and constant contact with our dispensaries now to ensure that happens. Once those certificate of operations process starts, it says on here by rule, 14-day notice. We're getting beyond a 14-day notice. We want to know now. We're calling now, hey, when do you think your dispensary will be open? The soonest I'm hearing right now is mid-November. Will there be product in mid-November? Not across the state, absolutely not. They're saying more like January, mid-January, for all dispensaries to be able to be up and running with full product from cultivators, being able to grow, test, and go to processors. But that's where we're at right now. Agents answer all questions necessary. There are some variance requests. They apply to do one thing. They supply a facility site plan to do something, and then all of a sudden they show up and there's no way with this easement that they have there now during build out that they can do something. So we will only approve that variance request if it's not for convenience purposes to save money. It has to match that application submitted, but we are dealing with some of those that are necessary, and they have to provide documentation. We do have some places that said, yes, we don't have a problem with the dispensary. Sure enough, put it there. Yeah, that's the address you're going to put it at. Thank you. Yeah, no problem. And then as soon as they were awarded, they decided, oh, we don't really want it now, and tried to do more moratoriums. And some of those are causing some delays, but those are moving forward as well. But some of the issues with delay is caused by those things I just shared with you. So again, not to bore you with rules, I talked about the 500-foot rule. We're making sure that that's still in play. If they've already been awarded, we've already proven. We went out, took pictures of every single dispensary that was going to, that was proposed, whether it was an empty lot or if it was a building that was pre-existing. We made sure to take pictures to ensure that there were no prohibited sites in that immediate area within 500 feet. Zoning permits, certificates of occupancy, fire safety inspections, all of those things are being done, and they have to follow all those rules again before we will give a certificate of operation. No different than any other building permit or build out. We're just a little bit more restrictive. If the fire department says no, then we say no. If the zoning says no, then we say no. It has to be pass everything before we allow that dispensary to move forward, and have to show all that proof and documentation. So specifications and layout, operation plans, organizational charts, all that have to be, when they share with us who's going to be on their, if they tell us we're going to have a pharmacist that's going to be a consultant for us, they better have a pharmacist that's a consultant. If they say they have somebody, obviously Ohio's brand new for medical marijuana, so there's not going to be any experience for an Ohio business person unless they're doing it out of state to have experience. So if they tell us, hey, I don't know what to do, but I know someone that does, and I've got their expertise to build this out and mirror what's in another state and make it successful, then they better have that person on board when we go to do our provisionals that's already started to prove out. And before we issue the certificate of operation, it needs to pan out exactly what they said. Security and surveillance. Again, this is easy. We have access to everything. We can have access to their video footage. They have to record everything. Destruction has to be recorded. Anything that needs to be destroyed, we have to be notified they're destroying it, what they're destroying, and the accountability should be 100% from what they receive, what they dispense, and what they have on hand. There's no room for error with that, with this, because again, as I stated earlier, it's packaged. So if they have to destroy something that's expired, they're going to destroy that package. They notify us. We can watch it via live feed, or they have to provide footage of that recording immediately upon request. So we have access to their VMS system. They have to give a username and password. I'm going to skim through some of this. I hope it don't drive you crazy doing that. But conducting electronic monitoring, use of panic button. We require all of these things within the dispensary. It's about the employee safety. It's about the patient safety when they're in there. And one thing that's important here is immediately upon discovery of any theft or loss, they must contact the Board of Pharmacy, and our agents will conduct an investigation immediately. Law enforcement, we are a law enforcement agency, so they fulfill that, but we have relationships with law enforcement, and we ensure that they have the knowledge of anything that occurs. If it's a robbery or a burglary or anything like that, of course, local PD is going to be immediately contacted, and then we'll be secondary to any emergency type requirement. So chain of custody through tracking, we pick the company that is running that inventory, so we have full access. I will know what every dispensary has on hand via computer system. I don't have that luxury with the traditional pharmacy. Couldn't have that luxury because there's too many of them. But each agent has up to 14 different dispensaries, and they have access to their dispensaries to be able to see that there's no concerns or issues with their inventory. And one final thing, they have designated representatives. Pharmacies have responsible persons. Dispensaries have designated representatives, which is the exact same thing. That is our main point of contact. That is who is responsible for everything in that dispensary. If a person steals something and they don't notify us, the DR is who we're going to submit a request for citation against and answer all those questions as to why. So we have, every location of every one of our licensees throughout the state has a representative responsible, similar to the fire stations. Your representative may be a physician that is in your area that is responsible for your license and security and drug stock of your location. So that is it. My next slide is information about the program, that website that I told you. And again, the hardest part for me doing these webinars is not seeing your faces, not being able to truly interact with you as far as this presentation. I hope I see some of you out on the street and say, hey, you're that guy whose voice I heard. But if you have any questions now in the future, Michelle, I know you're running the question part of it. At this point, I'm willing to take any questions that may be out there.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. And there's one question so far. How did the HIPAA laws affect the dispensary and the state?
The HIPAA laws are the same. So the HIPAA law itself is, of course, a federal law, but the difference is its confidentiality in general. I don't think it's going to fall under the guidelines of this is a HIPAA violation for this patient of a non-federally funded facility as far as patient charts, but the confidentiality rules that we have mirror the same ones we have for traditional patients.
Are there any other questions? You can either type them in, or if you want to raise your hand, I can unmute your phone. Give everyone just another second. So I don't think that we have any additional questions, but we do have your contact information, and I'll encourage attendees to reach out to you if they want to talk more specifically. Jesse, just so you know, we did record the webinar, and we can share it with the members who were unable to participate today. But we definitely appreciate your time today. It was a wealth of information, and it's so beneficial to all of our members. So thank you. And we will post this on our YouTube channel for anyone who wants to share it with members of their department or peers within their communities. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate it.